Hi, I'm here with Áine Homer today. You're a reflux specialist. You've written the book, The Baby Reflux Survival Guide. So Áine, start by telling us a little bit about your journey today and your background so that the listeners know a bit more about you and what you do.
All right, Charis, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. Infant reflux is becoming a bit of a pandemic. I first became aware of this about 12 years ago with the birth of my firstborn, who screamed on end every night for weeks. Then it started to creep into our days, 4 weeks. And by the time she was 6 weeks, she was not sleeping more than about 10 minutes, would only ever sleep in my arms. I remember asking the health visitor what was wrong with my baby and why was she screaming. The health visitor told me to put her down and to walk away and to leave her and that she needed to sleep. 25 minutes later, my baby girl was still screaming. So I had to pick her up. I couldn't leave her lying down there anymore. And the health visitor said, well, she's just a stubborn baby. I didn't accept that that was an answer. So I kindly asked the health visitor to leave and she never came back into my house again. I started to listen to my own child and I started to ask everyone, health visitors, doctors, pediatricians, lactation consultants, anybody I could find, why was my baby so upset? Why was she screaming so much? And I was told she had colic. And then after 3 months, when it didn't subside, they're like, oh, maybe she has reflux. And I'm like, well, what do we do? And the answer was, well, nothing, because they grow out of it. It's normal.
Right.
Now, I have never accepted that pain in my body is normal. So why would I let my baby scream in what sounded to me like a painful cry to be normal for her? So, and I will say reflux is really common, but I don't think it's normal. So it began a journey of research, late night Googling, and eventually I came across cow's milk protein allergy, which I didn't know was a thing. My baby was 8 months old at the time, and I cut out all dairy. We got little glimmers of changes, but nothing spectacular, nothing consistent. And I saw my old naturopath, and he gave me some advice about things to change, which again gave me little changes that were inconsistent. And with severe postnatal depression, when my baby was 9 months old, I said I had to take it into my own hands. My background is mechanical engineering with a degree in maths. And my happy place has always been a spreadsheet. Like, give me 47,000 line items and I will find the pattern within it. So I started tracking everything.
Yeah.
What she ate, when she ate it, what I ate, when we breastfed, how long we fed for, when she slept, when she woke, when she pooed, what we did with our day, when she used a dummy, all of these things. And after about 10 days, I started to see some patterns in what was going on. And so it looked like food was the biggest issue. So I changed our diet. I restricted us to 3 foods, which I will never share because that's no longer needed. Right. It was part of my learning journey. And we had 3 weeks of bliss. I'm like, okay, there's something in this. And I know I needed to eat more. So then I started research, well, why is this the case? And I discovered 3 decades of research that had been done in the 60s, 70s and 80s around the development of the infant digestive system. I was like, oh, okay. So I combined that with my knowledge from traditional Chinese medicine training around the molecular science of foods and how they interact with the body. And suddenly I had a plan that allowed me and my baby to eat far more foods. And so by the time she was 18 months, we were on track. Life was great. I was pregnant again. And I was wondering, what are we going to do second time around? My husband's like, it's okay. We know what we're doing. And then she arrived and we didn't.
Right.
She decided to come to this world to teach us even more. She had tongue tie issues. She also had cow's milk protein allergy. She had a mild nut allergy. She had sulfite allergy. Gosh. She had so much going on and suffered with sleep apnea for 3 years that like there was so much more to learn. And by the time she was 5, she had to have her adenoids and tonsils out. Yeah. And eventually we had 2 happy children. But that process gave me a passion because I had a 3-year journey relationship with postnatal depression. And looking back, it shouldn't have and didn't need to be that way.
Right.
And so I wrote up everything I learned in the Baby Reflux Lady Survival Guide to share with the world. And that book has sold over 13,000 copies already. So I'm so proud of it. It's changing lives. And it just asks the question of what's really causing any baby's discomfort. Because when we solve that, we get to an answer that opens the door for peace and calm in a home.
Absolutely. And we need more stories like this. My personal journey with my children was very similar. My eldest had a cow's milk allergy and I didn't realise for months. Same sort of thing, crying, didn't sleep. I was told to leave him to cry. I was told similarly he was very stubborn. But that's kind of what the advice 7-8 years ago was a bit more. We didn't know as much. So tell me, what are some of the main signs then that we need to be looking out for reflux or silent reflux in children so that we can help other people be a bit more aware of what they're looking for?
So the main sign that I say to any parent is first and foremost, is your baby more unsettled than you think they should be? Right. We really need parents to be leaning into their own knowledge. They know their child better than anybody else on earth. And so when parents are asking themselves what's going on for the child, there's over 80 different signs, symptoms and behaviours that could be going on in any combination for any baby. So generally babies are unsettled. Yeah. They're unhappy. It might be difficult to settle them. Some will have feeding dysfunction, or they're unable to feed calmly. They're not able to stay latched onto bottle or breast. We may have instances where a baby can't breastfeed. Right. And so parents kind of are forced to switch to formula and to bottle. We have children who look like they've got colic, which is lower digestive system discomfort. There's a lot of wind, a lot of trapped wind, painful gas, bloating. There might be mucousy stools. There might be explosive nappies. There can be birth trauma. We can have things like plagiocephaly, which is like flat spots on babies' heads, which also affect how they're feeding. We have to look at both mum and dad's sense of calm. Like worry, unfortunately, increases our own anxiety, and we pick that up. Our children pick that up as well. There can be birth trauma. There can be things in how baby was delivered. So Von-Tussen forceps or induction, all of these things can or could cause or contribute to reflux in babies, as can things after birth, such as antibiotics at any stage in infancy or pregnancy, disruption of the gut microbiome. It's really a huge swathe of things that can contribute to it, because reflux is not a disease in its own right. It is a symptom, and therefore is always appearing with something else. So it's the what else is it appearing with that gives us the clues to find out the underlying cause of both things.
I think that's a key point there, isn't it? Is that the reflux is a symptom of something else, whereas a lot of the advice out there is often that babies will grow out of it, or, it's just an age thing and there's nothing we can do. So parents are feeling left quite helpless about knowing what to do. But if we do actually look at it as a symptom, then we can dig into that a bit more. So what would you say, obviously you've given us some of the signs and symptoms there. What would you say are some of the main causes then that you come across as to why babies are experiencing reflux?
So most babies struggle with reflux from two main underlying causes, which is either aerophagia, which is the swallowing of air. Right. And then we need to dig into, well, why is that happening? Yeah. This could be anything from the preparation of formula to use of a dummy or pacifier to oral ties, so tongue tie, cheek ties, which are called buccal ties, lip ties. It could be feeding position. It could be things like the plagiocephaly, the flat spot, or torticollis, or physical misalignments within baby's own body that mean their oral function is not how it's supposed to be. It can be things like crying. Every time a baby cries, they go, wah! And in that inhalation, their stomach also fills with air. So we need to really dig down and see what is the true underlying cause of the aerophagia. The other aspect most commonly causing reflux is digestive maturity.
Right.
This is not intolerances. Strictly what it is the journey that baby's digestive system goes through normal growth means that at certain stages of infancy, they simply do not have the digestive enzymes yet to break down all the ingredients within their food. So formula milk is not just formula milk. It is a swathe of 30 or 40 different things that go into that milk. And so no two formulas are the same. You know, we need to be looking at the ingredients on the tin to see what's in them and then pinpointing what is the troublesome ingredient for any particular baby based on their symptoms and behaviours. Again, breast milk is not uniform. It is wholly dependent on what mum's eating and how she's been eating it. You know, so eating foods being rushed actually impacts how well a mum digests those foods versus sitting down and taking time to eat. It's kind of mindful eating.
Yeah.
Mum's digestive system works better when time is taken, and therefore we have to look at the balances of everything. But the digestive maturity aspect also includes allergies, such as cow's milk protein allergy, which is one of these transient allergies. And when I say transient, it's one of the things babies grow out of, or rather their digestive system matures to be able to digest these complex proteins when their body is ready.
Okay, so how do we go about handling any of that or identifying that? Like, how do we tell the difference between normal spit up and reflux for a start? Because that in itself can be quite difficult for a parent to decipher if they think their child has actually got reflux. And then how do they go about identifying what they could be reacting to within the milk or breast milk or with food? Like, I can understand we can keep a food diary, but surely within formula milk, that's quite a challenge. Like, where would you advise parents to begin to unpack this to help their children?
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what age a child is or whether they're on medication or not or what's been tried in the past. The first step is always to identify all the symptoms a child is experiencing, along with the severity of them and the frequency. Okay. So, for example, if I was to ask you, has your child ever hiccuped? The answer would be?
Yes.
Okay. But do they hiccup 10 times a day or is it once every 10 days?
Right.
You know, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
For a baby who's hiccuping once every 10 days, we're not going to look at that too much as a symptom. For a baby who's hiccuping 10 times a day, we're going to take that one much more seriously into our consideration. So on my website, I have a free download for parents to know what are the 80 plus symptoms they need to be looking out for. So that's available to everybody because we want to know what's going on. This is like doing a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. We have to take the pieces out of the puzzle, we have to turn them over, and then we start to put them together. Okay. When we start to put little pieces together in the right order, then we start to be able to compare this to the cover that's on the box and go, oh, okay, this group of symptoms means we're in this particular area.
Right.
And this is what I walk parents through my book, my online courses, is that how do you group these symptoms together? It's a process. Like this is the engineer coming back in. The process is the same, but the answers can be widely different.
So you'd recommend almost keeping a diary of all the symptoms from those 80 different symptoms so that we can decipher where we think that child is. And then what would you say the next step from there is? How do we go about actually tackling the symptoms?
So I will say, rather than overloading a parent, we will always go through the entire list of symptoms. And this is where frequency and severity is important. You only need to track the top 10.
Right.
The top 10 of what are most frequent and have the most intensity for your child. That's where you want to focus.
Right.
They're the ones leading the direction. So it's not completely overwhelming. Now, we need to understand which all of these symptoms, what they mean. So, for example, a baby who vomits or spits up, why is that happening? Well, it could be happening from an allergy perspective, that the stomach is receiving an allergen. It is part of our immune system. The stomach might go, I don't like this, therefore you're having it back. Here you go, there's the vomit back.
Yeah.
Vomiting can also be from aerophagia, where the stomach has been overfilled. And so when it contracts, there's nowhere else for the milk to go. So it comes up, it looks like vomit.
Right.
Or it could be an actual virus or a bug.
Yeah.
And so a virus or a bug or an illness will always have a fever associated with it. So this is where we need to go, right, vomiting on its own is not the story. If there's a fever, it's not reflux. Okay?
Yeah.
If there's a fever, we're looking at that being from something else first. So we solve that. We need to group the symptoms together. Allergies will typically have some sort of skin irritations, like eczema or hives that are recurrent. Again, I have to caveat that if it's an allergen in mum's diet and she's breastfeeding, then the symptoms will mirror what she's eating and when she's eating it. Whereas a baby who's on formula, it will be they're always consuming the same thing. So their symptoms will be much more consistent.
Right.
We're looking for things like mucus in the poo, possible blood spots in the poo. So we need to look at the full range of symptoms and understand what could be causing each one. And then you come up with a common thread. Now, this is what the online course does really, really quickly, like less than 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Parents will understand because I walk them through this process of specific symptoms and groupings. Again, they can use the book to go through it.
Tell me more about the difference between like a cow's milk protein allergy and, say, for example, a lactose intolerance. So my children have both grown up with a cow's milk allergy. But people often ask me that, well, I've got them some lactose-free milk. But what's the difference there for parents so that people can understand that?
Yeah, so intolerances and allergies are two different things. Allergies almost always occur in response to a protein. Now, I have to caveat everything because things like sulfites are not actual proteins, but they can cause allergy responses. But in a cow's milk protein allergy, the child has an allergy to one of the 20 proteins within milk. It's false to say baby has a casein allergy. Casein is one of the largest proteins within milk, but it's not always the one that causes trouble. There are 20 proteins to which a child can have an allergy response. An allergy response will appear in a child no matter how much of the allergen they're exposed to. And the symptoms will be as severe every time.
Right.
With an intolerance, the more of the compound a baby's exposed to will increase the severity of the response. So it's almost like a threshold level.
Yeah.
So intolerances tend to happen more in response to carbohydrates. And sometimes to proteins, but not so frequently. Again, there is no one blanket answer that fits everything.
Yeah.
But intolerances are usually down to the digestive system not being able to break down the compound fully. And so the responses appear within the digestive system. So it will be things like gas or flatulence or, trapped wind, digestive discomfort, sometimes a little bit of vomiting. With an allergy, you will see other systems of the body involved. So you'll see the respiratory system involved, such as nasal congestion or mucus buildup in the throat, sneezing, wheezing. You can also get skin irritations, hives, eczema, as well as digestive system upset going on. So there's always more than one of the body systems involved in an allergy response.
Interesting. Do children tend to grow out of it?
Yes. What happens is they mature. Their digestive system becomes online. So I will say there are some allergies that are lifetime allergies. Things like tree nuts. If a baby generally is born with a tree nut allergy, that is a lifetime allergy. It's not something they grow out of. Cow's milk protein allergy tends to be one they mature out of, rather. If we take casein as a very complex protein, what happens is it's 209 amino acids long. And in order to be digested, this really long chain of amino acids needs to be broken down into lengths that are 1, 2, or 3 amino acids maximum. That's what our body, the human body, can absorb. Now, in an infant, they possess no ability to break down proteins in their mouth, no ability to break down proteins in their stomach, and they only have protein digestive enzymes in their small intestine. As they mature, the stomach will start to do some protein digestion.
Right.
And that will ramp up as they grow older. So typically around the age of 2 to 2.5 years, which is more in line with when baby have all of their milk teeth. This is when they have a mature digestive system.
You state in your book that the first 1,000 days of your baby's life are the most pivotal. Why is that? Why do those first 1,000 days count for so much? What's so important about them?
Well, while I say it in the book, it's not just me. And I will recommend people go and have a look at the first 1000days.org.uk. It's a fabulous website and resource where this is basically the first 3 years of a child's life. So much is going on for them emotionally, physically, mentally, on all levels. And so in these first few years is where a child gets their stability. They get that sense of unconditional love. It's as they come out of the womb into this new world, is it a safe world for them to be in? They learn to communicate. The first 3 years is when the brain does the majority of its physical growth. So this time is important from an emotional support perspective. It's important from a physical growth. Are we giving children, the foods and the environment that is going to give them the gut health that supports their life? Because by the age of 3, their gut has its blueprint for life.
Wow. By the age of 3.
By the age of 3.
The blueprint for life. Wow.
Yeah. Now, I will say, thankfully, we can change our gut blueprint later on in life, but it's harder to do so.
Okay.
Yeah. I myself have gone from being total sugar addict to a total, years with no sugar, no alcohol, keto-based, healthy gut, flip-flop back to having plenty of alcohol and sugar. And, we go through these phases during life. It's harder in adult life to change our gut blueprint, but it's totally possible. We have things like the emotional stresses, the little traumas that occur in infancy or toddlerhood. These form the foundations of who our children are going to grow up to be, how they believe they fit into the world. So it's absolutely pivotal. And if you're familiar with the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, he talks hugely about this time of connection and the importance of, presence of parents. Yeah. One of the most important things I think for parents to do is when your baby is suffering, sometimes just being there for them is good enough.
Absolutely. I think it's Daniel Siegel, isn't it, who speaks? He wrote the whole book on the power of showing up.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Exactly that, just being there.
Yeah. It's like, any child who's older, they're going to fall over, they're going to cut their knee at some stage. We know as parents, we can't take that pain away from them, but we can be there for them to reassure them that it's all going to be okay. That space holding for our children that we know we will do when they fall over in the playground, it's exactly what we have to do when they have reflux or colic or discomfort in infancy. Simply holding them and being there with them at the same time, even if we can't do anything about it, reassures them that they're not on their own, that they're safe and they're loved. There is so much about this aspect of connection with our children and listening to them and acknowledging their experience in the first 1,000 days that really supports them growing up to be an independent, happy, healthy individual later on.
It's fascinating. How would you best advocate, how can parents advocate for their baby's reflux needs then? Like, what would be the first port of call? What would you advise them to do? Say they've gone through this process of identifying the symptoms, they know that their baby's got reflux, they've done a food diary and everything. What would you say is the next step for them to take?
So this is, I will say, solving reflux is a journey. Okay? Everything you've described there is about finding the starting point.
Right.
Okay? It's like, you're probably old enough, Charles, to remember that when you had GPS in the car, sometimes you had to drive a bit for the GPS to go, oh, this is where we are. Because only when you know where you're starting from can you then plot the course to your destination. Okay, so I assume that for every child I work with, destination is reflux free. Right. But let's say, I say to you, let's meet in New York. And if you just go west, I'll see you there in 7 or 8 hours. Mm-hmm. But if I don't know you're starting in Mexico City, those directions are totally useless to you. Mm-hmm. We have to know our starting point.
Yeah.
Once we know our starting point, then we can get the right course to go there. This is what that first step gives you, that underlying cause. What is your baby's underlying cause? That gives you your specific plan of action for your baby's reflux. And lots of babies will have more than one thing going on. Mm-hmm. So it's about knowing then what order to do the things in and for how long in order to get the right plan and to follow that. So again, my online course teaches that. My book teaches that. People I've trained teach that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not something you're going to find within the medical system because med school doesn't teach anything other than reflux is normal. And with the greatest respect to doctors, if we don't have the knowledge, we can't share it. Mm-hmm. You know, we only know what we've learned or figured out. And so the Western medical system teaches reflux is normal. So therefore, that's what doctors believe.
Wow. Gosh, there's a lot going on there, isn't there? Okay, so what else have we? We've talked about, obviously, reflux, silent reflux, and a cow's milk protein allergy. Talk to me about colic, because you speak in your book about how you don't believe in colic. Why is that?
Well, I'll also add I don't believe in purple crying.
Right.
Let's be clickbaity here.
Yep.
I think colic and purple crying are terms that were coined to give the medical professional an easy get-out clause to ignore babies.
Right.
And I know that's harsh. Mm-hmm. But when we look at both purple crying and colic, they both say, well, crying is normal. Mm-hmm. And the rule of threes is ridiculous. You know, that colic is something baby cries for 3 hours a day, for 3 days of the week or more for 3 weeks. And you're going, that's a lot of crying and it's unexplained. I said, nothing is unexplained. Mm-hmm. Sometimes babies cry because they want to know where their parents are. Yeah. Sometimes they cry because they need a cuddle or they're hungry or they need some sleep or they're overstimulated or they've got some discomfort in their body and they're trying to tell you about it. Mm-hmm. When we look at all of their symptoms, we can figure out what it is. Yeah. Now, 97% of babies with colic, when they pass gas, their whole body goes, oh, and they relax.
Yeah.
And so that tells us, right, digestive discomfort and gas is causing this baby's discomfort.
Yeah.
So then we ask the question, well, what's causing that? And how do we prevent that from happening? Mm-hmm. And so this goes back to looking at all the symptoms. So same symptom tracker that you use if a baby has reflux also works for colic. They are they're very much connected in that silent reflux is often misdiagnosed as colic, or colic is silent reflux, or digestive discomfort without spit up, we'll say a silent reflux. These are all terms used to kind of say to parents, it'll be okay. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, parents have to go home and continue supporting and holding space for their child who's unable to sleep, possibly unable to feed comfortably, unable to lie down.
Yeah.
You know, when we look at some of the symptoms and behaviours babies have, I counsel parents to adopt those symptoms as their own and ask themselves, would you be happy with the answers you've received if you had these symptoms every single day? Do you want to wait 12 months to do something about it?
Yeah.
Do you want to live in hope that tomorrow you're going to suddenly wake up and it's all going to be better? You know?
That's really good advice, actually, to adopt that as if it was happening to you. I think, gosh, how much I wish I had known all of this with my eldest. It's just it's so helpful to understand why they're crying and exactly what you're saying. I think the terms of purple crying and colic just don't give us any answers, do they? They just define it as normal. And that's just not a good place to be when you're the one at home in the middle of the night with that baby that's crying for hours and hours, and how exhausting that is when you need answers and you need information. Yeah. So I like that. Well, look, lovely. It's do you have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners today before we wrap up the session?
Well, I think I've said a lot. I've said it all. But really just to reinforce that as a parent, you really are the world's leading expert in your child. And when you're seeking answers, make sure they make sense for you and what you're seeing happening in your baby.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not getting the answers to your questions, either ask a different question or ask a different person.
Yeah.
You know, I remember just being cast aside by an allergist who ruled out my baby's cow's milk protein allergy because he did a skin prick test, which I since discovered are 50% right and 50% wrong. And he said, here's ranitidine, which was a medication used at the time. It's not used in the UK and the US anymore. He goes, if you give that, your baby, you'll be ringing me next Tuesday thanking me for changing your life. So I said, well, what will this do? He'll go, oh, it'll solve a reflux. I'm like, well, how? How long does she need to be on it? What does it do? What are the side effects? And he goes, oh, you don't need to worry your little head about that.
Wow.
And in that moment, while I felt so put down, I just went out of the car and I cried. I'm like, I'm not giving my baby a medication that nobody is willing to explain to me how it works. That was the pivotal point where I'm like, right, I've got to do it myself. So just knowing I'm here, there's lots of people I've trained. My book is a phenomenal resource. Like the number of lives it has already changed just astounds me every day. There are answers. And if you lean into what you believe yourself and what feels right, you will always get the right answer for you and for your child, always.
Lovely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And as I say, I wish I had known all this years ago. So hopefully this will help other people going through this now, giving them the knowledge and the confidence that they can seek help and support and they can find answers for their baby.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me here,
Lovely.
Jazz.
Thank you.